Hey, this is Christian Piatt, and I'm really excited to sit down today with a couple of guys involved with the Blue Like Jazz movie, which is coming out April 13th. In this interview, I got to talk to Marshall Allman, who plays Donald Miller in the movie. He's been in things such as Prison Break and also True Blood, and Steve Taylor, the director of the film. He's done a lot of work in film and music over the last several decades. So here is a little bit from our talk. So one of the things that I was curious about, Steve told me in San Diego that you guys were like um, really passionate about having this movie made. That like you guys were even like praying about it over the phone and things like that when it was looking kind of sketchy. I'm curious what it was about this story that you felt so passionate about that it had to be made into a movie.
I just think that, I think you were talking about earlier that the idea that Christian film had kind of sort of become a subgenre unto itself, and that when you say Christian film, you thought of a very specific thing, but you didn't necessarily think of it as like a movie that belonged with other movies. And so one of the things that I was so passionate about was that we were just trying to tell a good story and make a good movie that happened to deal with Christianity as opposed to kind of the other way around. And knowing me, like knowing my sensibilities and the kind of entertainment that I like, I would have loved that. I would have loved to have been able to gravitate to a film that, was just trying to be a good film first and happened to deal with Christianity.
Cool.
So that I was like, I would have loved this. This is something I would have gravitated towards. It would have really helped me.
Cool.
Yeah. When I read the book, it seemed like such a fresh perspective that in many ways the book sort of dictated what the movie should be. And, of course, having Don's involvement was a big asset as well. I think more than anything, when I finished that book, I just wanted to tell my friends about it, or give it to people who maybe had a very simplistic or one-dimensional view of Christianity, and say, I want you to read this and understand me, or understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And so our goal from the beginning was hopefully to make a movie that would create that same sensation in a theater as opposed to reading it. And
it's a lot easier to get people to see a movie than it is to read an entire book.
That's right, 2 hours versus.
Yeah, I know people,
20.
especially here in Texas, who are like, I haven't read a book since friggin' Old Yeller.
Yeah.
Where the red fern grows, man.
Yeah. I have a lot of friends, and they just say, I don't read. I'm like, what do you mean you don't read?
Don't read, yeah.
I don't understand that.
You can't, or you just
It's
don't?
almost impossible. It's like, how do you even get anywhere? He's like, well, I know that one post sign, and then they got that building there.
Obviously, there is a lot of differences between the story you tell in the movie and the book. In fact, I've been rereading the book. Now, and obviously, there's that could be surprising for some people or off-putting for some people. Some people are going to feel partial one way or the other. But what I thought was most interesting, Jordan was telling me that Don was like really the driving force in the screenplay. And it seems like particularly Marshall, like Don's character evolved. Like his theology and his character evolved from the writing of the book to the writing of the screenplay. And I was curious what you thought about that. If you were surprised or if you thought it was a good evolution or what.
Meaning that, in what way did you see that theology evolve?
Well, like in the book, he was more just kind of close to the vest about his Christianity, whereas in the movie, like he just completely divested himself of it and kind of ran the other way.
Yeah. Well, I felt like, when I was doing the movie, and what I've observed from people is like, I necessarily don't see Don in the movie as completely abandoning his faith, because we had that discussion, was like, is Don, like, especially in that first scene with Lauren where she's like getting the closet Baptist boy, and like just the whole motivation to go to read in the first place, was I abandoning my faith? And it was like, not really. You were angry you know, and people don't, and I think the majority of people who are raised Christian that go through sort of a dawn experience in college, they're not really abandoning their faith. It's just sort of kind of decisions, you know, because if you ask them from the outset, you would see they don't go to church or they don't do this or anything, but they would still call themselves a Christian, which infuriates a lot of people who maybe are more devoted Christians. Right. But these people never really see themselves as abandoning their faith. They just kind of, it's not really active. It's just dormant in their lives. And I think that's what happens to Dawn. And there's kind of like this lingering feeling. Every now and again you get a conviction of like, well, maybe I'm not really, am I a Christian? You know, it's kind of that kind of thing, you know, until Dawn actually realizes, he says in the movie, you know, until you see somebody else love something, it's like, oh, I didn't really love it. I didn't really do it, until you see someone else do it. And you go, oh. And especially see them do it in a context where it can be real for you. You know, for Don to even think that he could be a real Christian in the environment at Reed College is almost an impossibility until he realizes he sees someone else doing it and goes like, oh, wow, like, and then it kind of wakes up that dormant thing, and you feel bad because you realize that you haven't really been living what you know, say you, or you may see yourself as, you know.
So that mustard seed was always there. It just had to germinate.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, he didn't really he didn't go all as far as like the Pope, you know, against Christianity. He even says I didn't technically deny anything. You know, I just wanted people laughing with me for once instead of at me.
Yeah.
So.
Although I love the rooster crowing after after he didn't deny his faith. Yeah. That was awesome. Well, I got to ask at least one challenging question, because, you know, they can't all be softballs.
They can't all be softballs.
I'll lose my integrity. So one of the things, Steve, that we talked about in San Diego was my appreciation of the employment of, you know, you talk about archetypes and stereotypes in the movie. And one of the things that I said I really appreciated is I felt like the characters, even the Pope, even you know, the lesbian character, you know, were treated as archetypes rather than stereotypes, which a lot of times, even in popular culture, like, you know, Will and Grace and things like that, you know, a lot of times, even if a character type is treated with respect, it's still stereotyped. One of the things that I've noticed, because you know, I worked on the study guide with Dave Palmer for the movie, so I watched it again. There were two things that I did notice that could have bordered on stereotyping, and I wanted to get your thoughts on them. It wasn't any of the characters, but you know, of course, Don's early church, the Baptist church, was fairly stereotyped, and also I look at the water girl, the bottled water girl, that whole thing as a sort of a greater reflection of corporate America. And so in a way, you know, we have the people being, you know, more respectfully, three-dimensionally treated as archetypes, but the institutions as stereotypes. And that's very much a 21st century attitude. I wanted to just get your thoughts on that.
Right. Well, that's a good comment and fair criticism. From the start, we were presented with the challenge of Reed College. Reed College is such a unique and uniquely extreme environment that we were concerned from the beginning that by portraying Reed College more or less as it is, people wouldn't buy it because it just seems so crazy, you know, like the scrounge counter. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, most people don't know that that's a real thing, you know, or you know, something like a robot invasion or a pope. But all those things are real reflections of kind of this Reed College environment, and the uninitiated might think that we've stereotyped, you know, quote unquote liberal college, but that was just the reality of that. Mm-hmm. So to present the counter to that, we couldn't go with an average church because it wouldn't create enough kind of, you know,
culture
dramatic
symmetry or
So we definitely went with a very extreme version of kind of like a, you know, fundamentalist Baptist church. And there are times when I feel bad about that, and other times when I think back to, you know, some of the more fringy elements, well, but they're not fringy, of kind of evangelical culture and popular culture. And it's like, well, you know, if you've ever seen like a Carmen video or watched the Power Team or, you know, all these things, it's like, I'm not sure we were all that stereotypical. There's, you know, there's a lot of goofy stuff going on.
It's almost like they become a caricature of themselves.
Well, they do, yeah. Yeah, but I can see why people would think, oh, geez, that was, you know, those are kind of cheap shots. But it was partly for the story, and then partly because, you know, we've just seen that stuff. I've grown up within kind of evangelical subculture, and there's plenty of stuff to be embarrassed about. We just happen to put it, when you put it on screen, it's like, it makes you really uncomfortable.
Marshall, with your work on True Blood,
yeah,
you know, Alan Ball has what I think is a fascinating theology. I'm sure you're familiar with his other work, you know, 6 Feet Under and everything, and I'm curious how you feel about, you know, as a Christian, how you feel about his treatment of faith and religion in shows like True Blood and 6 Feet Under.
Actually, I didn't catch 6 Feet Under, even though my wife did an episode of it.
Okay.
I couldn't afford HBO at the time. But once I got True Blood, I definitely got HBO and caught up on it. Actually, you know, there were times that in True Blood where I was like, I definitely felt there was a certain level of sympathy, or you know, or that it was treated sympathetically, the idea of Christianity in it, because the character of Hoyt in it kind of represents what I think that the show thinks that true Christianity should be, you know. And I do know that there was many discussions had with the actor who plays Hoyt, Jim Perrick, about what an authentic Christianity kind of looks like, you know. And but I think they also are no holds bar about, you know, not pulling punches towards the way they see it, you know. I mean, people who aren't in on the church, they can only take us at face value of what we do, you know. And unfortunately, there's just as much, you know, bad fodder as there is good fodder coming from the church. So,
sure.
You know, definitely in the second season they completely characterized the church in general, and you know, I think they even had to venture into stereotypes. You know, Christians would watch that show and go, "That's so stereotypical," you know. And just what you asked Steve about, you know, when they portrayed the church, or even when they portrayed certain things, you know, it's just very difficult. It's just really difficult. But I actually think Alan Ball's, I think he's not like a Christian hater at all, from what I could tell. You know what I mean? I didn't get to know him very, very well at all.
There's some conflict there for him, but he does seem to have a heart for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I definitely saw just as much things that were positive about Christianity in the show than I did negative.
So how are you going to define for yourselves success for this movie? And also, I guess in a larger sense, what are your hopes for the impact of the movie overall?
I mean, success for me would be if the movie took on some measure of the book's pass-on ability, I guess. You know, I want you to come and watch this movie and let's talk about it, or see where I'm coming from, or people getting friends together and watching the movie. The book kind of created a new space for discussing faith, within a different context, I guess. And for me, success would be if the movie created that same space. You know, evangelical culture has sort of created a space where we don't like to talk about certain issues, and Blue Like Jazz, the book, kind of opened up a whole new area of discussion, and it would be good if the movie did the same thing.
Okay. Marshall, any thoughts on that?
Well, gosh, that was so well said. How about $100 million a buck? No,
hey, there you go.
No, that would be weird.
Yeah.
Or great.
Yeah, weirdly great.
Yeah, definitely. You know what? I definitely think that anytime, especially for me in my experience, that people who are against Christianity and so-called institutionalized religions and stuff, that the conversations become so charged that you almost can't even represent that point, because it's come to the point of, you're a hate monger or anything like that. So, but when you're citizens of a country, you're sort of married in a certain way, and marriage only works on good communication and understanding. And the only way for compromising in this culture for us to live under the same laws here is to have understanding and have conversation. And sometimes when that conversation is stilted and communication is ceased, and we've reduced each other to insults, basically, that sometimes an apology is necessary and a little bit of humility is necessary before the conversation can begin again. And I really hope that this could somehow quelch some of the anger from both sides.